bandage off?
I already removed.
Yes! Victory!
Thank you very much.
It took so long, right? 3 months of waiting, or 2 months, I think, of waiting, I think, right?
Yeah. But tomorrow I need to go to that clinic. That
Uh-huh.
time I need to wrap bandage again.
Uh-huh.
Immediately I
Interesting.
remove.
Uh-huh. No, absolutely. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, yeah, congratulations. Hey, Herman, welcome back, man. Good to see you. Can you hear me, man? Hello, Herman. Yeah, hey, you can see me. Awesome. Fantastic. You can hear me. Great. And Gregory, how's it going? Welcome to class, Gregory.
Thank you, Farhan. I'm on the way to my work. I try participate, but it's going to be noisy in the car, so I more hear than speak.
Sure, no problems, Gregory. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. We are taking a trip with Gregory. Gregory takes us on a journey wherever he goes to when he goes on his walk, and now he's going to work, so it's great to be part of that experience. And Julissa, also, welcome back, everybody. Okay, so guys, let's get started, right? I'm on my third class tonight, so I'm going to marathon through this. Hope you guys have fun with this class as well. Just wanted to begin, guys, by talking about the subject that we're going to discuss, as well as the...
Sorry, Farhan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kalinga website open and echo. I listen echo. So.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. Is there somebody who has a second window open, guys? There's an echo in the back. Do you guys have a second window open? Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. So
it's not me.
It's not you. It's not you, Heidi. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Gregory, do you still hear the echo?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I don't hear an echo, unfortunately. Actually, let's see. Herman or Julissa, do you guys have any other windows open, or?
No, I have all
You
this
don't?
closed.
Okay, okay. Gregory, I'm not sure. Maybe if you refresh, possibly it'll get better for you, Gregory. I'm not sure. Let's see if that works.
Okay.
Yeah, Herman, I also can't hear you, man. Something's wrong. I wasn't able to hear you.
Yeah. Hi.
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah, fantastic. Awesome, sweet. Just wanted to make sure. Great. Okay. So guys, let's get started now. So I wanted to mention the topic of today's class is going to be passive voice, right? When we talk about passive voice, we talk about actions that we give an emphasis to the object of the sentence instead of the subject of the sentence, right? So we'll talk about passive voice in a little bit. And then in the second part of the class, guys, we are going to look at the psychology of trauma, right? Sounds kind of scary, right? Sounds kind of scary, but it's not really that bad. I mean, when I was thinking of an article name, or when I was thinking of the name of the class, I was a little worried that maybe you guys would be people like no one would come to this class because it sounds like a scary class, psychology of trauma, right? But honestly, it's not that bad, right? We're going to talk about how a traumatic experience, having trauma, or going through a very difficult experience, how that can actually stay with an individual for many, many, many years, even after that experience has passed, right? So the long-lasting effect of trauma, right? We're going to talk about that. So to get started, guys, this is an advanced level class, right? So we are going to focus very little time on the grammar, okay? And we're going to jump into the article pretty quickly once I see that we understand, right? So when we talk about passive voice, guys, right? Passive voice is when it's the opposite of active voice, right? An active voice is when something that does the action, the subject that does the action, is the main focus of the sentence, right? Every Monday I go to school. I is the subject. Every Monday, whatever. I am the person doing the action, right? The lion ate the zookeeper, right? The lion ate the zookeeper. The lion is the subject of the sentence. The focus is on the lion, right? The passive voice is when the object of the sentence, which is the thing that's receiving the action, not the thing that's doing the action. The thing that is receiving the action, the object, is the subject, right? So I know that sounded confusing, but in a passive sentence, the object becomes the subject, right? So if I say, the lion ate the zookeeper, that's the active voice. The passive voice would be, the zookeeper was eaten by the lion, right? Or the zookeeper was eaten, right? It's the object, it's receiving the action eat, right? It was eaten. So the zookeeper was eaten by the lion, right? And so the way that we create the passive voice is we have the object plus the verb to be, and then a verb, right? So we have this. We have an object.
Some noise.
Yeah, my friends are here, so that's what part of the
As
reason.
Gregory said.
Oh, really? You can hear it now?
Yeah, no, I can hear some noise and echo.
Okay, yeah. Let me know, guys, if it happens again. I think it's just my friends talking, unfortunately. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. Okay, so the object that receives the action, right? That's the first part of the sentence. So in the construction, we have the object, plus we have the verb is, was, are, am, whatever, and then we have the verb, right? So the object plus, for example, is, was, are, am, whatever, right? Any conjugation, any form of the verb to be, plus a verb, right? So the person was eaten. What's another example? So let's think about, let's say, I'll give you guys an example. So Herman, let's say I ask you, right? Let's say I'm telling you, the maid cleaned the dishes. The maid washed the dishes. How could we make that into a passive voice?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure.
The maid?
So the maid washed the dishes, right? This is in the active voice, right? How could we make this into passive voice?
Okay, so the dishes is washed by the maid. The dishes I think the dishes were washed by the maid.
Fantastic, fantastic. Were washed, right? Because we're looking at the past tense here. In the first sentence, I said washed, so the past tense, and the past tense of dishes in this case, since it's plural, would be were, right? So the dishes were washed by the maid, right? Fantastic, fantastic. Let me think of another example. So Heidi, let me ask you, if I have the sentence, for example, let's say the stadium. Oh, I was gonna say it in the passive voice. Crap. The government built the stadium.
The stadium was built by government.
Yeah, fantastic. The stadium was built by the government, right? So, Julissa, what if I ask you, for example, the ancient Mayans created those pyramids?
Those pyramids were created by the ancient Mayas.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Gregory, let's say the mechanics fixed the car. Oh, actually, Gregory, I think might have some. He might not be able to hear us. Gregory, we weren't able to hear you, man. Something maybe. I think the traffic is. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay, Gregory. Don't worry about it. I know.
I hear you.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I know that he's in traffic.
No, what's your question?
So it would. Oh, okay. The question was, the mechanics fixed the car.
The car was fixed by mechanic.
Fantastic, fantastic. Look at Gregory's dedication, guys. Look at Gregory's dedication. He's driving to work and he's still in our class, right? Fantastic, fantastic. Awesome, awesome, right? So exactly. You guys did a great job, right? When we take the object.
It's not me driving.
Okay. It's not
My
you,
friend
Gregory.
drive, not me.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So your friend's driving. Good, good, good. I was gonna say, because that would be really dangerous, right? Fantastic. Yeah, right? So Gregory's driving. Can you imagine you're driving ahead watching the class? It'd be awesome, guys. Anyway, good job, Gregory. You're being safe. That's very good. So, right, this is how we make the passive voice, guys. This is how we make the passive voice, right? Making the object the subject, and then using the verb to be, is, was, were, am, whatever, right? And then a verb, right? So that is the meat of our lesson, guys. I'm not going to spend too much time on anything else. The only thing I want to say is sometimes in English we do use the passive voice as we do use the passive voice more often than we use the active voice, only sometimes in English. For example, if we're talking about scientific things, we say, for example, the salt was dissolved by the water, right? We don't say the water dissolved the salt. We say the salt was dissolved by the water. There are times when you can say, you can use the passive voice if you don't know who did something, right? So these pyramids were created in the 4th century, right? But we don't know who made them. So you don't have to say who made them. You just say they were created by, or they were created in some time, right? Also, politicians, guys, use a lot of passive voice when they don't want to talk about responsibility, right? So the problems were caused, mistakes were made. That's the best one we hear in the U.S., right? Mistakes were made. I'm sorry, it wasn't my fault, but mistakes were made, right? So nobody's saying mistakes were made by me, mistakes were made by Obama, mistakes were made by my wife, my secretary, my cousin, whatever, right? Everybody just says mistakes were made, right? We want to not focus on who is guilty, right? So these are some times that we use the passive voice, guys. Any questions on the construction of the passive voice?
No question.
No questions? Awesome, guys. Thank you. Now, guys, let's take a look at this article, right? So the psychology of trauma, right? What does that mean? Especially for people who have gone through very traumatic experiences, right? So I want to, before I begin the article, guys, I just want to quickly say that the word trauma is a noun, right? Trauma is a noun. It's that experience of fear, right? A very difficult experience, stressful experience is known as trauma, right? In hospitals, we see special trauma centers. They say, for example, the emergency room, the trauma room, right? But the adjective traumatic, that is the adjective, right? Somebody has a traumatic experience, right? The accident was a traumatic experience for my daughter, right? Or for the young child. But the noun is trauma, right? So we're looking at the psychology of trauma in this case, right? What's up, man? So looking at the psychology of trauma in this case, right? Fantastic. So now, also, guys, just to be sure, right? I want you guys to stop me anytime you have any questions on any words or anything in the article, okay? Because this is an advanced class. We are devoting the remainder of the time, okay, 40 minutes to just this article and the discussion afterwards, right? So don't hesitate to let me know, okay? So I'm going to start to screen share after I paste the link here, guys. So here's the link, right? It's from the Guardian newspaper, which is based in the UK, right? And we have this article, right? So it says, traumatic incident can skew people's perception for years. People's perceptions for years. Researchers find, right? What does this word skew mean, guys? Skew.
Lean or twist.
Yeah. Can twist people's perceptions, right? Can affect people's perceptions. Affect in a negative way, right? Affect in a negative way. Twist, make abnormal the experience or people's perceptions in this example, right? So traumatic incident can skew people's perceptions for years, right? Passengers on Air Transat Flight 236 that almost crashed paid more attention to words such as runway than a control group, right? This is just describing a summary of the article. We're going to look at the article and we will learn more about what happened on this flight, Air Transat Flight 236. So here is a plane that was very similar to that plane in this flight, right? Tests on passengers who escaped death when their plane ran out of fuel over the Atlantic have shown how a single traumatic incident can skew people's perceptions for years after an event. Researchers in Canada studied passengers who flew on Air Transat Flight 236, which suffered a catastrophic fuel leak as it crossed the Atlantic from Toronto to Lisbon in 2001. After both engines failed, the pilots put the plane into a glide for more than 100 miles and touched down safely with 306 people on board at a military base in the Azores. So the Azores, guys, it's a small group of islands west of Portugal, right? So it's in the Atlantic Ocean. Any questions, guys, on these two paragraphs?
What is leak? Fuel leak?
Fuel leak, fantastic, right? Leak is when you have something that is leaving, something that is dripping out like water or oil, right? So the fuel leak happened on this plane, so the slowly but surely little drops of oil or large amounts of oil maybe eventually started to leave this aircraft, right? So it was experiencing a loss of fuel as a result of this leak, right? So, yeah. Any other questions, guys, about this?
A
Makes sense.
glide. A glide.
Oh, okay. One sec. Glide. Where do we see that word here? This one right here, right? The pilots put the plane into a glide for more than 100 miles. So a glide is when a glide is when a plane isn't flying using its power. It's just gliding, as in it's using the air power, or it's just using its basic lift to continue staying above the clouds, for example. So, I don't actually know a good way to describe this. Let me...
Kind of slip?
Yeah, it's kind of like slipping, but I want to actually give you guys a good example of this. Let's see, Google Images. I think hopefully Google Images has something that's a little bit more useful. One sec, guys. Google Images, blah, blah, blah. Glide, come on. So a glide is when something is just, dang. Okay, so this one right here, for example, you know how these people, like these folks, right, they're gliding in the air. See how there's no engines, no power, right? They're just using the normal physics of lift and the air to just glide across, right? They're not really, they are just flying without power, just gliding along in the sky, right? It's kind of I don't really know how to describe it, guys. Maybe, actually, I know how to describe it. I want to use the word trajectory after this. Glide trajectory, I think that's going to help a lot. Okay, so this one looks good, right? So this is a fictitious example of Batman gliding at a constant angle with respect to his direction of travel. So you see, get Batman here, right? This is him just gliding, right? He's not using any power. He's just gliding along. His wings are out, and he's traveling from this point to this point, right? So you're not really using any power when you glide. It's just using a normal example. So
Using the wind in the air.
Yeah, just using the normal winds in the sky to maintain lift, right? To maintain lift. So that's that guy. So it was able to glide for 100 miles, right? One of the passengers was Margaret McKinnon, a researcher at McMaster University in Ontario. 8 years after the incident, she recruited 14 others who were on the ill-fated flight to take part in a study to investigate the psychological impact of the near disaster. Right? So this was one of the passengers. She was a researcher. 8 years after this accident, she asked 14 other people to she did a research to see what was their psychological impact, right? In the study, the former passengers sat in front of a computer which flashed up a series of words, each appearing for just 100 milliseconds in quick succession, right? So for just 0.1 second, they saw these words for just 0.1 second, right? At the end of each session, the person taking part had to type out a string of numbers that had appeared between two of the words, such as 222, 222. And then the one word in the series that appeared in a different color to the rest. So this, guys, I'm going to explain this a little bit because it's a little bit confusing. What happened was these 14 people, they sat in front of a computer. All of these 14 people had been on that flight, right? When they sat in front of the computer showed them a series of words. Maybe, cat, dog, runway, plane, crash, car, whatever, right? A lot of these words. Each one of these words appeared for just 0.1 second. Super fast, right? Super fast, 1/10 of a second. And after they had seen all the words, they were asked to do two things, right? Between two of those words, when they were flashing on the screen, between two of those words, there was one number. Maybe the number was 222222. And also, out of all of those words, one of the words had a different color. So they were asked to just write down those two things, right? They had to write down what number it was, and they had to write down what word had a different color, right? When the passengers and a group of age-matched controls sat the test the first time, the computer flashed up a series of neutral words, such as upholstery, beautification, and demographics, with common emotionally charged words interspersed, such as disaster, blood, and horror. As expected, all of the participants paid more attention to the emotionally charged words, and so scored highly when asked to remember them at the end of each session, right? So this, guys, is describing again the article, right, or describing this research. When they did this research, they had 14 people from the flight, and they also had 14 people of a similar age who are just controls, right? So when they say age-matched controls, right, they took just anybody from the street, maybe who'd never been on this flight, whatever. They took 14 people from the flight and 14 normal people, right? And these words included words like the words that they saw. Many of the words were very basic, like upholstery. Upholstery is like curtains and furniture, right? Other words were much more emotional, like disaster, blood, and horror, right? These kinds of words. At the end of the test, when they were asked to remember what some of the words were, everybody remembered these emotional words more, right? People said, oh yeah, one of the words was horror, one of the words was blood, right? People didn't say, oh, one of the words was upholstery, right? This is a random word, right? No one cares about this kind of word. Any questions, guys, on these last 3 or 4 paragraphs that we looked at?
Yes, sat the test is like taking the test.
Yeah, sat the test is the same as saying taking the test. This is a British article, so the British say sat the test instead of taking a test. Yeah, weird, isn't it? They're kind of weird. I think the British are pretty weird people. No, I'm just joking. Okay. So yeah, they sat the test, right? So then we see, but in a second round of tests, right, the scientists interleaved words that had no special meaning for the control group, but were associated with the airline accident or incident, such as Atlantic, runway, stewardess, and transat, right? So these words, Atlantic, runway, stewardess is the same as, for example, flight attendant, right? These words would have no meaning for just a common person. But when the former passengers sat the test, they scored 5 to 10 percentage points higher than the control group because the words were emotive to them and they paid more attention, right? What does this word emotive mean? There's part of this that might help. This part might help.
Kind of emotional.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Something that gives you emotion is emotive, right? It's just an adjective, right? So the control group, they had a much more emotive reaction, or they had a much more emotional reaction to words like Atlantic, runway, stewardess, transat, right? The other people didn't care. I mean, just normal control group, right? The results showed that nearly a decade after the near disaster, key words linked to the disaster were still highly emotive for the passengers, even when they appeared for only 100 milliseconds, right? Every word showed up for just 0.1 second. But even then, they were very emotive to these people, right? For them, words that reminded them of the flight were as emotionally charged as the words horror and disaster were for those in the control group, right? So this shows that a singular emotionally traumatic experience can result in enduring changes in our perceptual experience, said Daniel Lee at the Society for Neuroscience meeting in San Diego. That's it, guys, right? So this research, they were able to show that just one very traumatic event can cause, I mean, this is 10 years later, guys. 10 years later, and they are seeing the words for just 1/10 of a second, right? They're seeing the words literally for just 1/10 of a second, and even after that, right, they were able to, it affected them so much, right? So I wanted to hear you guys' reactions to this because I'm very surprised that this was so effective, right? That they were able to have such an impact on this group of people that were on this plane, right? Does it surprise you guys that the results of the study are, you know, that the result is this, that they can still be affected after so many years? Jaleesa, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think this is not something new. Probably we all have felt that when there is something shocking that happens to us, uh, and then after so many months or days, we still maybe we are going through similar situation. We have like the same feeling, maybe fear, or you feel afraid because it's something that has had a big impact in you. So I don't know how fast could be for us to forget all that. I guess emotionally it will be like very permanent with us.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it will take a lot of time to get to
But
forget about it.
but even in this scenario, Jaleesa, when nobody died, why do you think it matters so much? I mean, the plane landed safely, right?
But all the fears that they probably had at that moment, it
Uh-huh.
was shocking for them. So when they see or hear about it, they relate to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a good way of thinking about it, right? Heidi, what do you think? Does this surprise you, the results of the study? I think you're muted, Heidi.
Sorry. It's
Yeah.
still after 10 years from that traumatic experience.
Uh-huh.
How many years passed?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
I somehow I understand. I I've never had any traumatic experience, but I think about me. I lost my mother. She was still young. Then it was sudden death. So after that, 1 year, 2 year, after 5 years, some sometimes I remember her, not related to her. For example, she ate some food. She loved sea sea cucumber. Do you know?
Yeah, I've heard about that, yeah.
Very weird thing, right? I hate that. But when I saw the sea cucumber in the fisherman's shop, I remember her. Suddenly, I cried.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about that, Heidi. I had no idea.
No, no, it passed many years, so now it's
Uh-huh.
okay. Mhm.
Uh-huh. But yeah, it's something that I think, you know, yeah, really emotional things, right? They have that trigger. They have that ability to bring back memories, right?
Yeah. That time I didn't think about her, but suddenly I cried. Then
Mm-hmm.
why I cried? Then I remembered my mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it doesn't come as a surprise to you then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Herman, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's like Heidi and Judisa said, it's not nothing's new here about these traumatic incidents. But what I want to really know is what kind of relations traumatic impact a phobia, right? Some people phobia of balloons, and is that caused by some kind of traumatic experience or something like that that I really want to dig deep in, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, Herman, actually. And guys, for the rest of you guys, Herman is asking a great question about phobia, right? When we use the word phobia in English, right? Phobia means fear, right? Fear of something. So some people, right, actually have a very strong phobia of things like spiders, things like snakes, right? If they see a spider, they will actually have a reaction, a very, very serious psychological reaction. They will start to, freak out. Really, in English, using a slang English verb, they will start to cry, scream, run around, because they have a natural phobia of something like a spider or, one example. This was on TV, right? I was very surprised. This girl had a phobia of like balloons, right? She was so afraid of balloons that she started to. My friends are laughing. They really, but this is something that they saw, right? She was so afraid of balloons that she could not function if there was a balloon anywhere near her, right? Some people are very scared of birds. Any bird, just a pigeon on the street or a bird that's flying in the
I
sky.
am.
Oh, really, Julissa, you have a phobia of birds?
Yeah, but not when they are flying around. No, it's more when they are near my garden or near the windows. And I think it has to do because when I was child,
Uh-huh.
I was in the kitchen and suddenly there a bird crashed with the window and I saw some it's blood. So I guess it has to do with that because now I fear when some birds come into my window, I have to call, Mom, there is a bird here. Take it out.
Really?
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Herman, what do you think about that? A bird just came crashing through her window when she was a child.
Yeah, I think it's also yeah. I cannot comment that because myself is also afraid of cockroach.
Uh-huh.
Cockroach, yeah, I also afraid about that because on when I am when back then when I was child, I the cockroach stepped into my feet, yeah, and then I jump out, and until now I still very afraid of cockroach, especially that one can fly, you know.
Oh, yeah, the
It's like
flying ones?
yeah, yeah, it's
Those
like
are
a
super scary.
kamikaze Japanese airplane that will struck into your body or something like that. So you will run away from that.
Yeah. Flying cockroaches are like the kamikaze, right? It's crazy. It's crazy, right? We say people are laughing here. It's a great comparison, Herman, Flying cockroaches, right? We've seen flying cockroaches before. I've seen flying cockroaches before, right? When I was traveling in India and stuff like that, they're huge. The size is like this big. Like, aren't they huge, man? Those guys are big, man. So yeah, they have all these issues, right? So they're flying and they're just ugly animals, right? Little like insects. Um, People are scared of things like that, right? And other people, for example, have a phobia of heights, right? Very very afraid of height, right? So when they're flying, oh man, they cannot look out the window, right? Even though they're not like standing outside, they're very afraid of stuff like that. So I don't know, but Herman, seems like maybe past experiences have a big role in terms of phobia. I think that's a big reason for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then last but not least, Gregory, what do you think about this idea of a traumatic experience? Can it still affect somebody 10 years later?
I agree with former people. It's not something else. Experience of trauma chase people all their life. About worse, I can say people think when birds come to your home, it's bring death to your home. So we are afraid of birds they come to your home.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good, Gregory. I think we understood most of what you were saying. It was a little bit difficult at times, but yeah, I think you agree, right? That this is something that can happen to people, especially when they are struggling with the idea of, you know, the phobia. Phobia is just, I mean, it can be fear, it can be trauma, right? Trauma of different kinds of things, right? Could cause problems, right? So, you know, I like that idea, guys. I like what you guys are saying about that. I do have one I do have one question for you guys that actually developed as a result of this conversation, right? And that question is, you know, how does our psychology actually, no, not the psychology one, because I think we talked about that, but what are some other types of scenarios, you guys, that might affect what are some other kinds of traumatic scenarios, right, that could affect us? So, Julissa, do you mind starting?
Yes, I was thinking about in the case of some children, for example, when their parents divorce when they are very little, probably that can have an effect on them.
Yeah, I think definitely when folks are, for example, they go through a very life-changing event right early in their life, right, divorce-wise. What can be some of the after effects of having divorced parents, Julissa? What can that cause later on in life for some of these children?
Well, just to give you examples, maybe some can be more aggressive, or others could be more not so confident,
And they might also be
or
socially awkward
another.
too, right? They might.
Yeah, and also maybe some of them could be more even mature, since they have
Uh-huh.
experienced something so big in so little, so they grow faster.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great example of that, right? Heidi, what are some other examples of you think maybe traumatic scenarios? And this one,
Oh, when I
yeah.
was a child, I was running between the farms, the street, rough street between the farms by bicycle. In front of me, there's a kind of tube, black tube I found. Then
Hmm.
I ran through the tube, over the tube. Suddenly it moved and wind up my bicycle. It
Was it a
was,
snake? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I hate snake usually.
Uh-huh. You hate the
I
snakes
hate,
usually? Uh-huh.
yeah, but suddenly it moved and I, I understood it was snake. After that, I hate wrong, anything wrong.
That was for you. That was for you, Heidi. I
Thank
think
you.
he wanted to show the chocolates he got. Yeah. My friends are crazy guys. I live in a zoo right now. Wait, what'd you say, man? Yeah, she's Japanese. She's Japanese. Yeah. Yeah. Heidi, what does this say? I can't read this.
Hmm? No meaning. I can't understand.
There's no meaning. She doesn't
No
get it.
meaning, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just went to Japantown.
Yeah. He got them from Japantown, which is a part in our neighborhood that there's a lot of Japanese restaurants there. Yeah. We're crazy. We're living in a bunch of animals right here. That's why it gets loud. All right. Anyway, so yeah, guys. So Heidi, you saw that snake. What did you do afterwards? What did you do when you saw that
After
snake?
that, I found some twig or some rock things on the street. Always I was scared.
Oh wow. But I mean, was that snake stuck to your tire? How did it leave? Was it
Yeah,
just?
yeah, I ran faster, faster.
That is crazy. That is crazy. Wow. Um, Herman, have you had any crazy stories like this? Besides, was there a cockroach that tried to attack you when you were like a little kid sleeping or something?
Yeah, maybe only that kind of story about crocus that I can remember that I fear the most right now. But also there are the second things that I think almost everybody in the world is fear about is public speaking.
Ah.
Yeah. So public speaking rated the most fear. I don't know. Is it a traumatic experience or is phobia than the death itself? So when you are in a funeral, and then you were told to speak in front of the audience. You were rather inside that box rather than you are speaking in front of the funeral, right? So that's kind of story that I've ever heard when I'm going to seminars or workshop about the public speaking stuffs. So that's a very traumatic thing because you are going to speak in front of a large of audience, right?
But is it that bad, Herman, though? If you're at a funeral, you wish you were the dead guy instead of speaking? I mean, that's crazy.
According to the statistics, it is said like that. And then first it is afraid of public speaking, and then is afraid of death, and then the third maybe is afraid of something like snakes or other than that. But public speaking rated the most fear of traumatic experience or the most phobia that people got almost everyone in the world.
Wow.
What do you think?
I don't know. I don't like. You guys can probably tell. I like to talk. You know? So I mean, I've done speeches before in front of large groups, and I don't really care. I just say what I want to say. You know.
But there are some techniques. They say, for example, that when you have to speak in front of a lot of people, you can watch to a certain point in the wall or something, so that it seems that you are looking at the people, but you are not. You are looking at some point, a specific point in the walls.
Right.
You don't feel so afraid.
Right.
I don't know, guys. I talk whenever I want. I don't care. Yeah, for me, it would be something that is very difficult to. I mean, to say I would rather die than public speaking. Maybe other people feel that way. Honestly, Herman, I have no idea. But yeah, Gregory, what do you think about public speaking? Do you think it's very difficult to speak in front of a group?
No problem with public speaking. I'm not afraid.
Yes. Yes.
But
that's great.
I can't.
So that's great. No, that's awesome. I think some people maybe just naturally they enjoy it, Herman. You know, other people maybe they don't.
I'm also one of them that is really afraid of this public speaking because I have a traumatic experience here, I think, or very stressful experience when I was in junior high school when I was maybe do some mistakes when I'm in school, and then I've been called in front of the class, and then do something funny or something like that all people laugh at me, and then it triggers that public speaking afraid of when we are going to give a speech in front of audience, and it really gives an impact when I'm going to college or when I'm going to give a presentation to my clients. So I think public speaking is one of the most important things that we should master. Everyone should master because it can give a huge impact in your career, especially when you're doing a pitch or when you're going to do a presentation or convince people, especially investors or something like that. So we should pay very good attention on that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I agree 100%. Yeah, it's being a good public speaker. You know, there's an organization that is international that I've heard good things about. Actually, it's called the Toastmasters International.
Yeah, that's true.
And they have chapters everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world, Toastmasters is extremely international, and they have programs for people who want to better their public speaking, right? And it's a good program because everybody in the community gets together. You have clubs, you have meetings every week. You give a speech, you share ideas, you give feedback, you know, and it's very important. Absolutely, I think it's one of the most important skills. I agree with you, Herman. And guys, just to loop back on this idea, right, of traumatic experiences and trauma and psychological trauma, right? I wanted to ask you guys, you know, how can we in general promote psychological well-being, right? Because it's difficult. It's difficult for different ages. It's difficult for different ages. It's difficult for the type of trauma that we're talking about, right? So the trauma involved in phobia may be very different from the trauma involved in a near air disaster or the trauma involved in losing, a parent or losing a friend or losing a family member, right? How, in general, should we promote psychological well-being? For example, if somebody you knew was having problems, how would you maybe approach that problem? Let's start with Julissa.
I think the most important would be the support by the people that is around that person. Maybe they need to be more patient with them, but it depends on the traumatic event. Like for example, about phobias, they say that a way to deal with it is to confront your fears. I'm not sure if that would be a good way because you would be more scared, but they say that. So, but in the other cases, when it's about the emotional events that affect someone, yes, I think the people that are around them should be more close to them, more patient, listen to them, talk to them.
Yeah, I think those are all great options, right? So using friends and family as a bridge between the person that's affected by the trauma and the actual traumatic experience, right? Because does it help to talk about situations that affect us emotionally? I always think it helps to talk, right? Do you guys think it helps to talk? Or is it better to just keep all that trauma inside? I think it helps to talk, right?
Yeah, like you can
Yeah.
leave it all out, you share what you're feeling.
I think no.
Really, Gregory, you disagree? Gregory, do you think it's not good to talk?
Yes, I think it's maybe better not speak about that. Speak less about.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I think it's not good to talk. I think we should prevent this person for refresh the traumatical memory and prevent new events
Mm-hmm.
of new traumatical events.
Yeah, I think there's some value in that as well, right? I think I think there's some value in what Gregory is saying because, sometimes, guys, it might actually be difficult for somebody to talk about something like that, right? Like sometimes I've seen, for example, I tell a friend of mine, or I ask a friend of mine about something that happened to them, and they say, "I would rather not talk about this." Right? That's how they begin the conversation. I would rather not talk about this because talking about it, remembering that event could also be negative, right? Sometimes when people deal with sometimes one way that I think people deal with traumatic events is they block it out, right? They keep it in the back of their mind. They don't want to think about it, right? And having somebody say, "Oh, could you share with your ideas with me, please? I want to help you, whatever," could actually be negative, right? So I guess it's also not only, I think, Julissa, you were saying that it depends on the trauma. I think it also depends on the person, right? Because some people they have a more outgoing personality, even for something like this that's difficult to share, and other people, I think, have a very kind of introverted personality, right? They don't like to share things, and they're dealing with their problems by themselves, right? I mean, Herman, what do
Or
you think? I'm sorry, Julissa, go ahead.
or
Yeah, I think
it can take them more time to start talking about it.
So do you think it's better to at least give them the option of talking?
No, I think each person has their own ways to express, but yeah, for some, will take them more time to start talking
Hmm.
about.
And is that natural? Should we allow that to happen? Allow them to take their time, or should we?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, okay. Yeah, Herman, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, never mind. So I think it is based on several factors when we are going to deal with these situations. Maybe about the period of the events. If someone mothers die in maybe last month or 2 months ago, maybe we should not talk about that. But if that is already 10 years or already 15 years about that, then maybe it is fine talk about that to cure him, to cure one of has had the traumatic experience, because it's such a long time, right? So maybe it is not relevant to not to discuss about that, because maybe the person has embraced that, embraced the reality of their loved person is already left, something like that. And then the second thing, I think it is about the event itself, or the traumatic experience that one gets. If it is really scary, or really terrifying, maybe it's best when we are not going to discuss about that. But if it is just small of it, or just not very big kind of events, yeah, so maybe it's fine when we are going to talk about that. Yeah, so maybe that kind of factors. And then the third one, maybe it's depends on the people, on the one person itself. If they want to cure about their phobia, or they want to cure their traumatic experience, then they have to talk about that. So it depends on their motivations, if they want to cure it or not, or just leave it there. I think it's there. What do you think about my opinions?
I agree completely. I agree completely. What about you guys? Julissa, do you agree with what we heard from Herman?
Yeah. Sorry, I was a bit distracted.
Oh,
All
But
right.
the last part I heard that he said it depends on the person when they feel ready to start sharing about their traumatic experiences.
Yeah. Because at one point we will see that this person, because of this a traumatic experience on airplane, then maybe for the rest of his life he would never go anywhere, right? Maybe he would not go abroad, go overseas, something like that, right? So it depends on this person, how brave they are, and how persistent they are to cure their traumatic experience. So it depends on one person's also, right?
yeah. I agree. I agree 100%, guys. I think it's very important to be sensitive to these issues, right? I mean, when we are psychological counselors, for example, clinical psychologists, right? People who deal with these kinds of issues, they have to be very sensitive, right? Each person has their own sensibilities. Each person has their own feelings. They're very, some things are more emotional to some people compared to other things, right? So, absolutely, guys, absolutely. Well, thank you, guys. Really, I think it was a great class. I just wanted to wrap things up a little bit by saying, when we were looking at the difference between passive and active verbs, right? So passive verbs, we have when the object of the sentence becomes the subject, and we usually use, for example, the subject, then the verb, and then was, is, am, whatever, something, the verb to be, and then we shift to another verb, right? So the maid, or the dishes were washed by the maid, right? And then we also, when we look at the general situation of phobias and trauma, right, I think there's really this great understanding of, people are sensitive to their different ideas. We need to be very caring when we deal with phobia situations, and that little things can take a long time to heal, right? They can have psychological effects that last many, many, many years into the future. So, any questions from you guys? I really enjoyed the class. Herman, thanks a lot for contributing. It's your first day on
Yeah.
Colingo, but you're doing a great job adding to the conversation, which is great.
Right. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for your help. Also.
Absolutely, absolutely. And same thing with you, Julissa. Thank you so much for coming. Any other questions?
Thanks, Farhan. No question. It was a very nice topic.
Awesome, awesome, guys. Thank you
Right.
so much, and I'll see you guys
Right.
tomorrow. Hopefully, more classes.
All right.
See you
Okay.
later.
Bye bye.
See you guys. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Is the subject of the sentence. The focus is on the lion, right? The passive voice is when the object of the sentence, which is the thing that's receiving the action, not the thing that's doing the action. The thing that is receiving the action, the object, is the subject, right? So I know that sounded confusing, but in a passive sentence, the object becomes the subject, right? So if I say, the lion ate the zookeeper, that's the active voice. The passive voice would be, the zookeeper was eaten by the lion, right? Or the zookeeper was eaten, right? It's the object. It's receiving the action eat, right? It was eaten. So the zookeeper was eaten by the lion, right? And so the way that we create the passive voice is we have the object plus the verb to be, and then a verb, right? So we have this. We have
I
an
can
object.
hear some noise.
Yeah, my friends are here, so that's what part of the
As
reason.
Gregory said.
Oh, really? You can hear it now?
Yeah, no, I can hear some noise and echo.
Okay, yeah. Let me know, guys, if it happens again. I think it's just my friends talking, unfortunately. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. Okay, so the object that receives the action, right? That's the first part of the sentence. So in the construction, we have the object, plus we have the verb is, was, are, am, whatever, and then we have the verb, right? So the object plus, for example, is, was, are, am, whatever, right? Any conjugation, any form of the verb to be, plus a verb, right? So the person was eaten. What's another example? So let's think about, let's say, I'll give you guys an example. So Herman, let's say I ask you, right? Let's say I'm telling you, the maid cleaned the dishes. The maid washed the dishes. How could we make that into a passive voice?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure.
The maid?
So the maid washed the dishes, right? This is in the active voice, right? How could we make this into passive voice?
Okay, so the dishes is washed by the maid. The dishes I think the dishes were washed by the maid.
Fantastic, fantastic. Were washed, right? Because we're looking at the past tense here. In the first sentence, I said washed, so the past tense, and the past tense of dishes in this case, it's plural, would be were, right? So the dishes were washed by the maid, right? Fantastic, fantastic. Let me think of another example. So Heidi, let me ask you, if I have the sentence, for example, just wanted to begin, guys, by talking about the subject that we're going to discuss, as well as the...
Sorry, Farhan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kalinga website open and echo. I listen echo. So.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. Is there somebody who has a second window open, guys? There's an echo in the back. Do you guys have a second window open? Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. So
it's not me. I'm.
It's not you. It's not you, Heidi. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Gregory, do you still hear the echo?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I don't hear an echo, unfortunately. Actually, let's see. Herman or Julissa, do you guys have any other windows open, or?
No, I have all
You
this
don't?
closed.
Okay, okay. Gregory, I'm not sure. Maybe if you refresh, possibly it'll get better for you, Gregory. I'm not sure. Let's see if that works.
Okay.
Yeah, Herman, I also can't hear you, man. Something's wrong. I wasn't able to hear you.
Yeah. Hi.
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah, fantastic. Awesome, sweet. Just wanted to make sure. Great. Okay. So guys, let's get started now. So I wanted to mention the topic of today's class is going to be passive voice, right? When we talk about passive voice, we talk about actions that we give an emphasis to the object of the sentence instead of the subject of the sentence, right? So we'll talk about passive voice in a little bit. And then in the second part of the class, guys, we are going to look at the psychology of trauma, right? Sounds kind of scary, right? Sounds kind of scary, but it's not really that bad. I mean, when I was thinking of an article name, or when I was thinking of the name of the class, I was a little worried that maybe you guys would be people like no one would come to this class because it sounds like a scary class, psychology of trauma, right? But honestly, it's not that bad, right? We're going to talk about how a traumatic experience, having trauma, or going through a very difficult experience, how that can actually stay with an individual for many, many, many years, even after that experience has passed, right? So the long-lasting effect of trauma, right? We're going to talk about that. So to get started, guys, this is an advanced level class, right? So we are going to focus very little time on the grammar, okay? And we're going to jump into the article pretty quickly once I see that we understand, right? So when we talk about passive voice, guys, right? Passive voice is when it's the opposite of active voice, right? An active voice is when something that does the action, the subject that does the action, is the main focus of the sentence, right? Every Monday I go to school. I is the subject. Every Monday, whatever. I am the person doing the action, right? The lion ate the zookeeper, right? The lion ate the zookeeper. The lion bandage off.
I already removed.
Yes! Victory!
Thank you very much.
It took so long, right? 3 months of waiting, or 2 months, I think, of waiting, right?
Yeah. But tomorrow I need to go to that clinic. That
Uh-huh.
time I need to wrap bandage again.
Uh-huh.
Especially I
Interesting.
remove.
Uh-huh. No, absolutely. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, yeah, congratulations. Hey, Herman, welcome back, man. Good to see you. Can you hear me, man? Hello, Herman. Yeah, hey, you can see me. Awesome. Fantastic. You can hear me. Great. And Gregory, how's it going? Welcome to class, Gregory.
Thank you, Farhan. I'm on the way to my work. I try participate, but it's going to be noisy in the car, so I more hear than speak.
Sure, no problems, Gregory. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. We are taking a trip with Gregory. Gregory takes us on a journey wherever he goes when he goes on his walk, and now he's going to work, so it's great to be part of that experience. And Julissa also, welcome back, everybody. Okay, so guys, let's get started, right? I'm on my 3rd class tonight, so I'm going to marathon through this. Hope you guys have fun with this class as well.